Hi there, bass players. Boy, we're really going to have some fun today. We're going to be comparing these two basses here. This one is a Pre-L Precision, built I believe in 1962, and this one is a Fender 1962 reissue, built just a couple of years ago. I've only just got this bass. I've hardly played it. I haven't even put a strap on it yet, and I'm not going to give them a side-by-side sound test because I'd have to put exactly the same strings on each bass and all that sort of thing. Okay, let's start with this 62 original. You can see by the serial number here, I like to imagine Leo Fender's fingerprints would still be inside this one. Both basses probably started life as the same colour, as a sunburst. This has been stripped back, unfortunately, from its original finish. I say unfortunately, it's unfortunate for the world, but for me, I probably wouldn't have been able to afford it if it hadn't been changed a bit from its original state. The first thing I notice about the two is that the neck on the original feels a bit bulkier than the neck on the reissue. I wonder what they think about when they're making these reissues. They're probably not trying to fool you that it's a genuine 62, just trying to make as good a bass somewhere along the lines of how they made them back in those days, I guess. The first difference that I notice, or one really big difference, is the tuning keys. On the original here, the tuning keys work back to front. You turn it that way to bring the notes up. On the reissue, the tuning heads are the other way around, and you turn it just like you would on a normal guitar. I believe that the first Fenders, they bought these tuning heads, they were made for stand-up basses, and that's why they're back to front on the old ones. And I can see why they put them the normal way around now. The plastic in the scratch plates looks very different. This seems much blurrier. It's greened a little around the edge, and that's probably the biggest indication that it is genuinely as old as it's meant to be, that the plastic slowly went green. Whether it's a blurrier pattern because of aging or it's been manufactured a bit different, I can't really say. From memory, I think that back in 63 this would have looked a much more like that kind of plastic. We'll have to wait another 40 years or so to see if this one starts turning green. I'll make another video and tell you all about that when the day comes. This one still has the pickup guard on, and this bit here called the ashtray. Let's take them off and see what we can see. I can actually smell the timber as I'm doing this. Obviously these things haven't been taken off before, or not very often anyway. Okay, there's a little finger rester. I don't know anyone that uses those. Maybe there are certain playing styles that require it. Let's see what's inside. Well, I can really smell the factory and everything like that inside this. They're these smallish modern pots. They work all right. I guess sooner or later they're going to wear out and I'd replace them with more genuine ones. Big solid looking condenser, everything looks pretty good. No silver paper in there, but with the Fender split pickup, I guess you don't need it. And it's amazing how little Leo Fender thought about shielding, really, when you look inside strats and that. Maybe there were less fluorescent tubes around. Sometime in its lifetime, probably in the 70s, you can see that the 62 has had a replacement bridge put on it. A badass bridge or something like that. It's a lot solider and it's a sort of moulded metal, I guess, whereas this is much closer to what the original Precisions would have had. I think they would have had a bit of like a screw thread around these bridge pieces, but they're basically made out of the folded tin. I noticed when we have our photo taken, we always pose with our favourite guitar and our favourite amplifiers and things like that. When Leo Fender had his photo taken, one of the best known photos of him, he's posing in front of a big machine that looks like it drops weights down and folds metal. And it's amazing how much of his products could be made from folded metal and made out of that one machine. He must have loved it. The ashtrays and bridge pieces are all stamped rather than moulded. He probably used the same thing to cut out the plastic parts on the first Telecasters and then the first Precisions. Now, speaking of spare basses, here's another one I wanted to show you. This is a real bottom of the line Squire reissue, not even a reissue, a Squire Precision made in Indonesia. These come in a sort of student pack. You get the bass, you get some books and a tuner, and you get a little amplifier. Now, because they're for beginners, a lot of people buy them and they don't carry on with it. So if you look on eBay, there's usually a lot of these selling quite cheap. To make this playable, I had to take it to pieces and put it back together several times. The parts would all be stamped out perfectly in the Fender factory, but the actual handwork of putting them together was pretty rough. I had to shim the neck back that way a bit, and by the time I did that, the strings and everything else were so high, I had to raise the pickup and everything, but it sounds pretty good now. Neck's a bit thin and that, but it's quite nice to play. The point is you can pick up one of these real cheap, and you can put it in your car. It can live in your car. It means you've always got a bass wherever you go, and if you leave the windows open on a hot day and someone pinches it, well, it wasn't worth a fortune, you know. And you get the little amp with it. And these little amps, what's it called? Fender Rumble 15, they're fantastic. They're a great little guitar amp. They're a great little practice amp for a bass. They're a good recording amp. They're terrific. All the time I've been comparing these basses, picking one up and the other, I haven't even thought about the weight of them, so that means they're very similar. I have to sort of swap hands to even get an idea. Perhaps the reissue's a fraction heavier, but they're very similar in weight. This reissue bass is set up with flat wound strings with pads in here, and the flat wound strings, somebody would be using that to get what we'd call the James Jamerson sound now, although as well as James Jamerson, all the bass players, Jet Harris and all those guys would have used these kind of strings back in the old days because that's all you could get. This bass is set up for slightly more modern round wound strings. It was John Entwistle who got the string companies to put those sort of strings out, and just to drop a few names, when I got my first bass, I was working for John and he gave me a set of strings, so I've used these ever since. I'll play this one with the flat wound strings for a while to see what it's like. But I'd probably have to change everything that I play with the bands I'm in now too much to go over to the flat wounds, and I guess I'll put the round wounds on the reissue. And again, that's why I'm not really doing a sound check between the two, because they're both set up so different, but certainly the reissue sounds good. I'll have to play it for years and years to really know how good it is. Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do with this bass until I've played it a while. Let's take it downstairs and put it in the time machine and we'll see how we go. Well, there you go. It's 2014. That's about 2.5 years that have gone by. The Pre-L is still the best bass. This one's going good, the new reissue. I did have some trouble with the jack plug, so I replaced the pots, the volume pots, and the plug, and all the soldering. And I don't know how many gigs I've done with this, but they're both going good. The only thing I don't like is I wish they'd make the neck on the new ones as thick as the neck on the old ones. I'm sure it sounds better, and to me it feels better. Now let's check out the final report. Okay, what's the final report? Well, anyone will tell you these old pre-Ls are the best basses ever made. This sort of bottom of the line Japanese Fender reissue Q series is a very good bass. Obviously not as good as the pre-L, but it's a very good bass. The bottom, absolute bottom of the line Squire, made in Indonesia, quite playable. I've seen plenty of better bass players than myself playing those. The thing is, in 100 years, 50 years, these will be worth the price of a Stradivarius. Real musicians won't be able to afford them. I wouldn't be able to afford it now if it had its original finish. So let's hope that when that day comes, they're still making these.